You can only hide for so long. You can only say, but I can't risk my kids for so long. As the woke cult goes door to door making demands, making everybody bend the knee, they're not going to skip your house simply because you turn your lights off or put up a sign in the window. No, they'll come and knock it and say, oh, could you get on your knee for us now and swear your allegiance? Too many people said, I can't speak up. I have kids. I have to protect them. And what you were really saying was right now, it is too comfortable to present any risk. I'm not going to say anything. I don't care what happens in the future. Or perhaps you just didn't heed the warnings. How many times have I said? How many times have many others said? Your children will not be safe unless you stand up now. We had someone quote Thomas Paine's Common Sense on the Timcast IRL podcast the other night in a super chat saying, let there be trouble in my day so that my children will know peace. Effectively saying to the people who would not stand up for their rights, their values, their freedoms, because they're worried about the comfort of their kids today, are condemning their children to a despotic nightmare of a future. Well, I hope you teach those kids Mandarin and prepare them for the gulag. Well, I tell you this, you can only hide for so long. And perhaps if many of these parents knew then what they knew now, they would have spoken up sooner. Many of them are speaking up. Many others aren't and should. But we're starting to see how serious things are really getting. Now, I had Steve Bannon on the podcast a couple times. And one of the things he said was that come August 15th, when these parents see what the schools are doing to their children, there will be a revolt. Sure enough, he was right. Once schools started back up with vaccine mandates, mask mandates, COVID restrictions, distancing, parents started getting really mad, not to mention the critical race praxis stuff they're putting in schools. And then we had Steve Bannon on again, and he said, I didn't realize it was going to be this bad. I thought it was just going to be a bunch of protests. Oh, you want to talk about how bad it's getting? Vice reports, Board of Education goes virtual because people at IRL meetings are a-holes. After too many school board meetings became hostile, a Maryland county is moving theirs online. Hiding. They're hiding. Why? Because the school board and their employees are being attacked. That's how bad it is. And so you sat back. I'm not going to speak up at work. I'm not going to speak up against these corporate mandates. I'm not going to speak up against the football stuff where they're getting on their knee. I won't do it. I have kids. Now they've come for your kids. And now many other people are getting kinetic, as it were. I'm not a big fan of kinetic conflict. I don't think it works in this day and age. And as you can see, Vice is already using it as propaganda against parents who are trying to protect their children. But let's be real. You shouldn't be attacking people. You lose when you do. We are not it's not the 1800s anymore. It's not the 1900s. We're in fourth and fifth generational warfare. Winning hearts and minds requires being persuasive. And you're not persuasive when you're violent. Vice reports, a county in Maryland announced that it will hold all of its school board meetings virtually, not because of a risk of spreading COVID, but because its employees are being assaulted by protesters. The Harford County Public School System briefly reintroduced in-person school board meetings, but the fun's over because too many adults threw a fit at the idea that their children should wear masks in school to help protect them from catching COVID-19. In a video, Harford County Public School Board President Rachel Gaudier, and I'm assuming that's how you pronounce it, and Vice President Carol Mueller explained the school board meetings would move to virtual video sessions, not because of fears of spreading COVID, but because people have been too belligerent to continue meeting in person. On August 16th, Harford County Public Schools started requiring all students and personnel to wear masks on buses and in school buildings. During a school board meeting on the same day, protesters gathered against the mandate, calling it child abuse. The meeting was cut short because of unruly conduct. Quote, we deeply regret to share that a few community members intentionally disrupted the opportunity to speak to us at our business meetings on August 16th, Gaudier said in a video. Deliberate tactics were used to disrupt the meeting, like speaking out of turn, shouting profanities, banging on windows, refusing to comply with building mandates, and most accordingly, physically assaulting Harford County Public School employees, she said. This is unacceptable to the members of the board, and we anticipate that our community at large joins us in the sentiment that this behavior will not be tolerated. Don't attack people. Seriously. Don't give them an excuse, and just don't be violent. In a September 7th board meeting, presumably the last in-person meeting they'll have, several people stood at the microphone to denounce mask mandates. And Vice goes on to say, which are proven to slow the spread of COVID-19, vaccines in general, which work, and demanded that people repent before God. That one is still up for debate, they say. Across the country, school officials and community members have had to endure all kinds of unhinged behavior at school board meetings from people who oppose the mandates that protect children from COVID-19. They go on to say children are more vulnerable to the Delta variant. This is an extreme exaggeration, mind you. Children are the least, have the lowest risk factor. We don't want them to get sick, and kids have died, but that's being disingenuous. Being unhinged at a school board meeting gives you a decent shot at going viral these days. It's the venue of choice for spouting whatever nonsense you want, as YouTube considers these meetings in the public interest and won't take them down for misinformation or harassment. Quote, while we have clear policies to remove harmful COVID-19 misinformation, we also recognize the importance of organizations like school boards using YouTube to share recordings of open public forums, even when comments at those forums may violate our policies, a spokesperson for YouTube told Motherboard, after a video of a man spreading misinformation about vaccines at a school board meeting went viral. By cutting abusive community members, people off at the source, the Harford County School Board stops people from spreading COVID-19 and their inanity any further than their own Zoom window. Quote, no one should have to fear being assaulted at their workplace, Gautier said. As a board, we will not ask CSP staff to continue to put their physical safety at risk. Well, I will absolutely side with them in that regard. Y'all shouldn't be attacking people. And I'm not saying you specifically. I'm just saying people in general should not be attacking people. You lose. You make propaganda. It's bad. I will point out something particularly interesting. Let's take a mosey on over to Wikipedia. Maryland's first congressional district, which includes Eastern Shore of Maryland, Salisbury, parts of Baltimore, Harford, and Carroll counties. This is R plus 14. Very interesting. In 2020, it was 59% Trump, but Harford also falls into Maryland's second congressional district, which is Howard, Harford, Baltimore, and Arundel counties. And this is D plus 13. So I would, let's look at the, let's see if they have, so they have Biden 66-32. So it's fairly split. The people in this county are split. But here's the issue. I'll tell you this. The people on the school board, I'm willing to bet, voted for Biden. They are in the establishment cult. They probably believe crackpot nonsense about Ukraine and Russia and the economy being good because they're not smart enough to do their own research and they blindly follow without question. The other groups, for instance, probably blindly follow things of their own nature, but with independent voters on their side, tend to be a more eclectic group, probably challenging what the narrative is. There was a prominent YouTuber who posted that these red states who are defying Biden's illegal and unconstitutional vaccine mandate were praising their fictional character in the sky or whatever to side with the virus. You see, here's the thing about these people who once claimed to be anti-establishment or atheist or, whatever, some anti-SJW. They only opposed the authoritarianism from the right because they wanted authoritarianism from the left. They don't support science. They support popular narrative. If they actually looked into the science, they'd find very interesting things, most of which I can say is hard to parse and, well, partly inconclusive. Though I do say there are many promising studies on alternative treatments, we don't have conclusive data just yet because there's many that aren't, though it seems like the data is leaning positively. We'll see what happens when it comes to FDA authorization, and we'll see how things play out. But it's going to be particularly difficult for actual science to succeed when popular narrative supersedes actual science. And I'll run the risk of getting banned on YouTube talking about what I'm going to be talking about in this one, about kids in schools. But the truth is the truth, and that needs to be pointed out. The truth is there are many promising studies for ivermectin saying that it reduced viral reciprocity. That's the wrong word. Replication. What's the right word? Replicase. I don't know. Promising studies. Oxford, for instance. To be fair, there's also a meta-analysis, which is smaller than many. So there's like, I think 53 studies. There is then a meta-analysis of 14 studies showing ivermectin did nothing. Okay, so it may lean positively, but the FDA has not authorized ivermectin for use. That's the reality. Of course, there are many people who then say, well, I look at the data and I'm going to trust Brett Weinstein. My answer is, you know what? Don't take it from me or anyone on the internet. Don't take it from the censors. Take it from a doctor you know and trust who's been paying attention to the news and can inform you adequately and tell you things as an expert. Because I can't do that. But that's the truth. It's not horse paste. This is what these people believe. They believe the lies. They jump on them. Rachel Maddow posts these lies. They believe it. And then they want to punish your children. Perhaps if you spoke up a little while ago and rejected this stuff, this wouldn't have happened. Perhaps if regular people in this country stood up and said, shut up, go home, I ain't buying your nonsense, we wouldn't even be here. Worse still, if people do not speak up now, it will get worse. But I'll be a little more optimistic on this one because they are. Check this out. LI students in the Bronx, Long Island, parents, teachers prepare to walk out of school in protest of mask mandates. This is from today. They say at least 2 districts across Long Island, West Islip and Massapequa, pronouncing that wrong, are expected to hold protests for school walkout day. Those planning to take part in demonstrations like West Islip residents Veronica Walrat say they want to make a statement to Governor Kathy Hochul and their school districts against requiring face coverings for children. I think that it should be optional. I think parents should have the choice to make that decision for their children. I'm not against masks. The Massapequa School District released a statement regarding the planned protest saying, quote, an unauthorized exit from the building will be viewed as an infraction of our code of conduct and will result in consequences as outlined in the code. This includes jeopardizing a fall athlete's eligibility to participate as a Massapequa team member. If these parents have any spine, they would respond with but a middle finger. Shut your mouths. Stop making your lives dependent on other people. Stand up for yourself, stand up for your kids, and give your kids a better future. You don't need them to go to college to be a football player. If the system is broken and wants to put your kids at risk, this comes first. Your values, your family, not some dreams of college athleticism. It's too bad, isn't it, though? You know, we give up those goals and those comforts for what's right. Yet there's a hard lesson in life. But if you'd be willing to give up your rights, your children's safety, because of some popular narrative or attention from the masses, well, then I guess teach your kids Mandarin now. And I'm not saying there's a joke. I mean that literally. China is going to rise as an economic power. They're going to start putting pressure on a bunch of other countries. The U.S. is slipping because parents will not defend their own children. And then, you know, we're going to have to start working out deals with China for our own manufacturing back, and you're going to need to be able to speak. So teach your kids now. Or you can defend your values. You can defend the future of your children. You can push back on the authoritarians and the despot. You can demand the jobs back. You can say no to the outsourcing, no to the lax border policies. Speak up now or forever hold your peace. But again, I'm being optimistic on this one. Certainly I can complain about this nebulous group of people that I'm singling out, but parents are protesting. Penn Trafford parents hold protest over Pennsylvania's mask mandate for schools. This story from the 7th. Very similarly, parents walked to the high school to stage their protest. We've got more. Unmasked students protest at school. Fans kicked out of UM football game Ann Arbor headline, September 4th through 9th. Manchester Community Schools, about 24 students at Manchester High School entered the school without wearing masks in protest of the Washtenaw County Health Department's mask mandate that went into effect. These are kids. There's a video, I don't know if it's this school, where there's a cop who's like, I'm not arresting kids, but you were told to wear masks. And so then the parent says, okay, you can go in the school. They're not going to do anything. They can't touch you. And so the kids all walk to the door, and it looks like some kind of administrator tries to block them. And then one kid's yelling, go in, just go in. They can't touch you. And then the kids just walk in all cheering. They couldn't do anything about it. Stop complying. There are people on Twitter that are like, it's not a vaccine mandate from Biden. You just have to get tested every week. What working class person or parent has the ability to schedule a test every single week? No, that's called pressure. It's easier. You just go and get the vaccine and you're all done. Yeah, Joe Biden's already talking about the booster shots. And then you got to keep your card up to date. When will it end? No. Say no. We the people, we decide. Not some autocrat in the executive office saying that he's going to bypass Congress and the Supreme Court to pass legislation. We can't stand for that. Here's some more. Mask protests continue for third day in Kiski area school district. Wow. Protesting the state's school mask mandate. continued for a third day in the Kiski area school district with a group of 10 people stationed outside the high school in an administrative office on Thursday morning. The protesters, including parents and students, declined to comment when approached by a Tribune Review reporter. All of them had signs and one waved an American flag with messages such as, "It's not a mask, it's a muzzle. Your health is not my responsibility." I love it. Geraldo is like, "My family should have the right to go and live." And I'm like, they do. No one's stopping you. You're just scared. "I should have the right to walk through a volcano." Yeah, and you'll probably die probably from the fumes before anything. Should we then install a big air filter and cooling system so that we can walk in volcanoes? No, there's risk. I get it. It's absurd, right? Volcanoes, that's stupid. Nobody would want to do that. Yo, if you don't want to walk around, if you're scared for your family, ain't nothing I can do for you. People get sick. Sometimes there are worse sicknesses. That means you should be responsible for your family. If there's a bunch of people huddled around in a city and they're all coughing and gagging, don't walk your kids through it. But could you imagine these people like Geraldo being like, "That group, you should all be force medicated so that I can walk past you." Walk around them. Go somewhere else. Move to the countryside. No one's forcing you to stay in New York City. And the same is true for a lot of people in the vaccine mandates. The only issue there is I don't think people should be forced to flee because of illegal government action. But there is always that option. All right, here we go. We got more. CCSD staff to hold walkout to protest vaccine mandate. This is Las Vegas. Thousands of Clark County School District employees did not show up to work on Tuesday in protest of a vaccine mandate. This is from the 7th. What started as a school district walkout has quickly grown to workers from a variety of industries in Las Vegas. The group that coordinated the rally is called Las Vegas Freedom of Choice, which has more than 37,000 members on Facebook. All right, let's get real. YouTube at any point is going to nuke my channel because we see where this is going. But let's be real. Let's talk about truth. From The Telegraph, a NewsGuard certified source, 87.5 out of 100. The only fault they have is that they don't disclose their ownership and they're not providing information on all of their writers and reporters. You ready for this one? Teenage boys more at risk from vaccines than COVID. Young males are 6 times more likely to suffer from heart problems after being jabbed than be hospitalized from coronavirus, study finds. Now, I'm not here to just pander to one side, to oppose the establishment blindly without facts. I'm here to point out a story like this weighs heavily on parents who then decide, you know what, I'm not going to comply. But I will point out two very important things. The first thing is, this may be true. However, the issue with COVID is contagion, right? So that's an added factor. Many people are pointing out that a very small number of children have died or been hospitalized, but they're also saying if we vaccinate kids, they'll be less likely to have a breakthrough case of COVID and then spread it to older people, and thus all around could reduce the damage to those around them. I think it's a fair point to make. But I think if a parent's going to read this story and say, you know what, I'm more concerned about the health of my child than I am about some prospect of reducing infectivity, parents are going to make that choice for their kids. And more importantly, I will add, it is but one study. And I'm not going to take one study as absolute truth. I'm just going to point out that there exists information that gives parents pause. I'm not going to tell you what to think. In fact, I'm going to tell you what you should do. That's right. Here's my medical advice to you. Find a good doctor. That's all I can do. Sure, I can tell you to go to a doctor and seek treatment for your illness. I can't tell you what that treatment will be. I can tell you to go to a financial advisor and plan for your future adequately. I can't tell you how to actually do that. And I can tell you, hey, maybe you should sue someone if they defame you, find a good lawyer, but I can't tell you how to actually implement that process and what precedent or what claims should be made. I'm not going to advise you in any of those things other than to go to the experts to do so. If you don't like your doctor because they're dumb, then get a better doctor. But if parents see this and they go to their doctor and they say, explain this to me, and the doctor can't, well, many of them aren't going to follow up. They're going to walk out and say, I ain't doing it. So long as we have science saying things like this, you will have parents saying, I will not accept that risk for my child to protect you who are already vaccinated. Joe Biden said in his speech, we're going to protect vaccinated workers from unvaccinated workers. And I'm like, what does that mean? Breakthrough cases are exceedingly rare. That's true. Look at even Ben Shapiro's pointing it out. Okay, I am pro-vaccine. I think mRNA, seriously read about it, incredible. Not even kidding. Incredible. Transferring this messenger RNA into the cell and then change. You can actively change DNA. Now, the vaccines don't do this, but a more elaborate version of mRNA technology does, and is gene therapy. The vaccines are sort of more of a half measure. They just change the code to generate spike protein and then eventually fizzle out. That's at least what the data suggests now, though there are concerns about no long-term studies because it's too new. I think it's brilliant. Absolutely brilliant. We can see that for many people, it works perfectly. It's got a very high efficacy rate. We've got some troubling data coming out of Israel. They're a bit ahead of us. And we've got Fauci and Biden talking about boosters every 5 months. So maybe it's not going to be as good as we hope. But I'll tell you, I think it's fantastic. Now, here's where I draw the line. I can't tell you what to do. I can't tell you what risks you should or shouldn't take. I can't give you medical advice. I can just say, I think the technology is fantastic. They say it might cure cancer. They say it might create a vaccine for HIV. I'm like, wow, that's awesome. This could eliminate, basically any viral disease or contagion and cancers. All for it. All for it. The only issue, your personal freedoms, your rights, and your opinions. That's it. That's you, not me. We don't share the same opinions. Many of you probably might disagree and not like the vaccines. And I'm like, oh, I can't tell you how to live. Why? Because I believe in decentralized authority. I don't believe in authoritarianism. I certainly think that we grant authority to the government for certain reasons, but there are limits. I don't know your medical history. I don't know your allergies. I don't know your risk factors. I don't know your religious beliefs. So you go talk to a doctor you know and trust, have them advise you properly, and do what you think is right, as many have already done. Mandating this stuff, I'll tell you what you're going to see. Parents dropping the hammer and saying never. Steve Bannon, you were right. I'll leave it there. Next segment's coming up at 4 p.m. over at youtube.com/Timcast. Thanks for hanging out, and I'll see you all then.